Hey everyone, this is Dr. Steve Orma, and in today's video, I'm going to talk about how the process for overcoming insomnia is multifaceted. This is an important topic because a lot of people go wrong in trying to overcome insomnia by just trying like this one skill or one technique that they read online or possibly in a book or maybe even from a provider, and then it doesn't work and they get frustrated and they conclude, oh, I can't overcome insomnia. They get more hopeless, they get more anxious. So this is a really important topic and a really important part of understanding how to get past insomnia. So first of all, there's no magic bullet for insomnia, meaning there's a really effective process that I've talked about many times. I've gone through that in detail. That can get you past insomnia and keep it away for life. It's very powerful. It's very effective, but it's not like a quick fix. Like you could just do this for a few days or a week, and there's more involved in it than that. And so this is why like medications don't work, because they're not really addressing the problem. They're just addressing the fact that you can't sleep, and then they sedate you, they knock you out, but they don't solve the underlying problems causing the insomnia. And to do that, you need to follow a process. Now, that process is multifaceted, and really there's 4 key elements to it. I'm going to go over those. But first, I want to talk about the mistakes that people make. So with the process for overcoming insomnia, that's sometimes called CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, sometimes people will read about this online, or they'll even go to a provider that is supposedly a specialist, and they'll say, hey, what you need to do is sleep restriction. We need to shrink your sleep window down a lot. Like you've been spending so much time in bed. Now we're going to make you go to bed at midnight and wake up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. And we're going to do that until your insomnia goes away. And you're like, oh my God, that sounds pretty intense, but I want to get over this insomnia. So let me try this. And then you go and try this, and you may be fully committed and you're really sticking with it. And man, you even start seeing a little bit of improvement in your sleep. And then all of a sudden you're in a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks if you can stand it, and the gains stop. You stop getting improvements. You're still having really poor nights of sleep. You're starting to get frustrated and anxious and worried, oh, this isn't working for me, or this is just too hard to stick with. And ultimately you give up. And this is what I've seen happen so many times with people when they come to me, when they said, oh, I've tried CBTI, or I've tried sleep restriction, and it just didn't work, or it was too hard to maintain, is because they're trying one skill, one change out of context with the rest. And it's not going to work if you do that. It's the same thing with sometimes the other skill that many people try it's called stimulus control, which is when you get out of the bed when you're not sleeping. And people will learn about that skill, and when they're not sleeping, they'll just get out of bed and they'll try that for a few nights. And sometimes it works for a little bit, but then it doesn't work, or it doesn't work at all. And then the same result happens, where they get frustrated and they kind of give up. The problem here is not the skill, although sometimes, or not a lot of times, as I've talked about, even these skills by themselves are implemented incorrectly or taught incorrectly. But even if you were doing it perfectly, even if you were following these skills perfectly, but you were only doing 1 or even 2, you still wouldn't get past the insomnia, and it would lead you back to that same point of frustration and anxiety and wondering, can I get over this problem? So this is why I'm doing the video today, for you to understand this is multifaceted. Multifaceted just means there's several parts to it, and there's several key parts that you have to do all of them in order for this to work. Okay, you have to do all these elements, and you have to do them in a certain timing and in a certain way over a certain period of time in order for it to work. So I'm going to give you another example. Let's say you were 200 pounds overweight, Okay, so technically that's obese. Okay, and you should definitely lose weight if you're that much overweight, because there's a lot of health problems and diseases that can develop from that. But you are not going to lose that weight if you just follow one thing. Okay, like a lot of times what people do when they try to lose weight is they go on a diet. I mean, this is classic, right? There's these zillion diets out there. They go on Weight Watchers, Slim Fast. I mean, you name it. And sometimes if they're really committed, they will lose weight, and sometimes they'll lose a lot of weight. But then they don't stick with it. They go off it. They go back to their old patterns, and the weight comes back, and many times even more weight than they had before. So now they're even in a worse position. And now they're more hopeless because they think, well, I did the diet. I stuck with it. I worked really hard. I lost the weight and then I gained it back. Maybe I just can't get the weight off. Maybe that's just me. Now, the problem there is you need to do more than just dieting when you're trying to lose weight. The thing that actually usually gets people with dieting and a lot of change is not the technique even, it's the mindset. It's, they'll slip back into their own thinking patterns, their own negative thoughts, the self-critical thoughts, or just the old behavior patterns of how they ate before. And they don't know how to handle that. And those things will undermine the positive progress. And then all of a sudden, it collapses and then they slip back. Okay, that's classic what happens on diets. And this is why diets don't work for people. Because they're just trying to do the diet and not see the whole picture, where there's other elements that have to be implemented in addition to the diet. So it's the same thing with insomnia. And I want to go over the 4 main components here. This is multifaceted. What are the facets here? Okay. So there's really 4 key ones. There's really more elements to it that's usually included with CBTI, and I've talked about those before. But really the 4 key ones that if you just do these things, these are the main things that are going to kill the insomnia and get rid of it. The first one is keeping really good data. This is rarely talked about. Who talks about, you need to keep data to get rid of insomnia? No, it's usually just some, quick skill or technique. But unless you know what your data is, and what I mean by data, I mean like, how are you sleeping? How many hours a night are you getting? What time are you going to bed? What time are you waking up? How long are you spending in the bed? How much of the time that you're in bed are you actually sleeping versus awake? Are you keeping that consistent? What do you do when you're not sleeping? How many hours are you averaging over the course of the week, over the course of several weeks? Are you taking medication? If so, what's the dosage? I mean, there's so many different variables here that affect the sleep and that affect a person's pattern of sleep when they have insomnia. And so everybody's pattern is different when they have insomnia. The underlying core issues are the same, but like the pattern is different, meaning how they're sleeping night to night, week to week, month to month. And all these different variables that I just mentioned, how is that showing up for them? It's very unique for each person. And unless we know that, unless we can see this is like an X-ray into your sleep, we cannot apply the skills. We will not be able to personalize and tailor those skills to you because we have no idea how you're actually sleeping currently or over the past week. And so it's just going to be applied in a very generic kind of way, which isn't going to work. It's just like, if you break your arm, not everybody wears the same size cast. It should fit your arm, and everybody's arm is different. So this is why when you go to the doctor with a broken arm, they don't just give you a generic cast out of like a box and say, here, put on the cast. Because, people have very different size arms and different shaped arms, and that's not going to work for your broken arm. This is why they put on a cast. If you've ever had a broken, they'll actually set a cast and with like wet, whatever they use to create the cast that fits your arm perfectly and then hardens around your arm. That's how, when you're going through insomnia and you're applying these skills, it should fit your sleep pattern like a glove. And then actually it's dynamic and we change that, how that fits every week. So we change that cast every week based on how your sleep is progressing. How do we do that? The data. We have to know what your data is every single week, every single night, over the whole course of the process in order to continue to tailor it and personalize it to your sleep pattern until we break the insomnia pattern and we get a normal pattern back. Okay, so that's number one facet or element here is keeping and tracking really good data. The second one is what I call sleep scheduling. Now, this is what's commonly called sleep restriction. I don't like that term. It's not accurate. I think the previous video I went over why sleep restriction is a misnomer. It's not correctly named. It's not correctly understood or implemented. But so I call it sleep scheduling or sleep strengthening. This is the next element, and this one is critical. This is the thing that creates the structure and the frame. This is actually the cast around your sleep based on the previous week's numbers. We need to know how long you should be in the bed and when you should get into bed, when you should get out of bed. And that structure is the cast that breaks the poor pattern of insomnia and sort of trains or retrains and reestablishes the healthy sleep pattern that's in you. You haven't lost it, but it's off track. Okay, you have to regain it and retrain it. And that is key. So that's sleep scheduling, number two. Number three is what I call the 30-30 rule or the half-hour rule. And this is where, if within that structure, so you're following your sleep schedule, let's say, it's tailored to where your sleep is now. But even within that structure, what do you do when you're having trouble still falling asleep, or you wake up in the night and having trouble falling back to sleep? You need to know how to respond to this. You need to know how to respond to this mentally, but also, most importantly, behaviorally. Like, what do you do in action when you're having difficulty sleeping in the bed, even within the structure? And that is also a critical skill. And that's the third facet or third element here. Okay, and then the fourth one is your mindset. It's managing your thoughts and your emotions as you're going through this process. If you can't do that, then you're not going to be able to stick with it. You're gonna give up. You're gonna get discouraged, frustrated, anxious, and then you're not going to be able to stick with the process long enough or consistently enough to get the result and get past the insomnia. So if these are the four elements, again, I'll just summarize them here. Keeping really good sleep data, creating number two, creating a sleep schedule that fits your sleep pattern perfectly and that's adjusted week to week. Three, the half-hour rule or the 30-30 rule, which is how to respond effectively in action, in behavior, and in your mindset when you're not sleeping within that structure. And then the fourth is managing your thoughts and your emotions as you're navigating this process so you don't get sidetracked and give up. All four of these elements are critical to succeed at overcoming insomnia. If you remove any one of these elements, you will fail. In my experience, I've never seen one person get past insomnia, no matter how committed they were, if they were missing even just one of these elements. Because you pull out one and you're screwed. And even if you have two of these elements or three of these elements and you're following them perfectly, you're not going to get past insomnia because you're missing a key element that's needed. It's like a recipe. Think about it like a recipe. You know, if you're baking a cake and you're missing one ingredient, the cake isn't going to work. You know, if you don't preheat the oven or have it at the right temperature, if you don't put in the eggs, the cake isn't going to stay together. You know, if you don't put in the sugar, then the cake isn't going to taste very good. So like every element in a good recipe is necessary. And if you remove one of them, it's going to mess up the cake and you're not going to get a cake or a very good one. So this process too is a very specific recipe, and you're putting in each ingredient in a certain sequence and a certain timing and in a certain way for each person in order for it to be successful. And so this is, if you're not doing this, either if you don't have the recipe, the full recipe, or you don't know how to implement the recipe, or you're missing one ingredient, this is why you're struggling to overcome insomnia. And this is the solution, is to make sure you're following this multifaceted process that includes at least these four key important elements. Now, in my program, I do add a few other things in addition to this, like a relaxation element, stress management, relapse prevention as well, which is like, once you get past insomnia, how do you maintain this for life so you don't, relapse or slip back into it again? But those aren't the critical elements to get past the insomnia to begin with. It's these 4 elements that I went over, and these are the keys. So I hope that gives you a much better understanding or overview of this process, and that it's multifaceted and it's dynamic, and it's important to be, not important, it's critical, it's crucial to be applying all 4 of these things to the process and doing it effectively and doing it for a long enough period of time, enough to break the pattern and establish a healthy pattern of sleep that you can maintain for the rest of your life. Okay. So if you like this video and you're on YouTube, you can click the like button. You can also subscribe to the channel here. If you're not subscribed, I do a video like this every week. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below. And if you have any questions or anything that you would want me to answer about this process or about insomnia, and I haven't done a video on it, ask the question. And if I get enough questions like that, and it seems like something that would be good for a video, I'll create a video just for you. So you can leave that question or comments below. Otherwise, I hope you have a good rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.